Hey folks, welcome to Bear Mountain. Today we're going to be talking sweet potatoes. So why don't you come along and we'll show you what we're doing for this season. Well, last year you might remember that we were trying to raise sweet potatoes, but we didn't really have any access to trying to get sweet potato slips from our seed companies that we normally deal with. And part of the reason why the pandemic and supply chains got messed up and they just weren't available.
We were late.
We were late. So what we did is we had some sweet potatoes that were left over that we purchased for the holiday meals at Christmas time. And there was one sweet potato that was left. And so what we did is we started making slips off of it we put the sweet potato in a jar of water, and it's kind of the standard thing that people do when they were kids, and you wait for the slips to grow, and then we'd cut them off, and then the slips would be put in like some water, and they would eventually get some roots, and then from that point pot them up and move them out to the field, right? And it really worked out pretty well. We actually got I think we ultimately planted 30 slips off of that one potato, and we ended up getting probably 30-40 pounds of sweet potatoes out of it. And the interesting thing about it is we had no idea what the variety was, or still don't, or whether it actually would perform, but it actually did. So that was a good thing. But we had a lot of little extra guys left.
Not eatable.
They weren't really eatable, but they were just like little spuds. And so they were kind of like about this size. And what we decided to do was, okay, we'll make slips out of these guys, but at the same time we kind of wanted to expand and get some varieties that were kind of across. I think they're probably closer to being yams when you talk about Georgia Jet as a variety, and another sweet potato variety. It's an older one called Beauregard. I think we're still waiting on that one. There's a supply chain problem with that one. But we did start a number of our own, and we did a little different this year. One of the things we did was we, instead of putting a sweet potato, such as small like this in water, what we did is we put some potting mix in a standard open bottom tray, and we put a whole bunch of those weird sized sweet potatoes in it. And this was, we started this kind of late. This was started back at the end of March, and we just kind of keep it damped and kept it on a heat mat. And now we're at a point where we're looking at some really good slips to start some individual plants. And this method works out really well to do this, so you can get a lot of slips via this way. But you know what? One of the other things that we're going to do as a test, and I'm sure it'll work just fine, is in the field we still have a bunch of these little guys like this that are okay. They've been kept in storage and cool, and I believe you could just plant these as individual plants, and they have eyes on them. It'd be just like a seed potato, just like if you're planting a seed potato itself, and they should begin to sprout as well. Maybe take a little bit longer, and certainly you wouldn't get as many plants as you would if you were starting slips. However, one of the advantages of doing this is that if you're late and say your soil is just getting warmed up and it's like the end of May, June, you could plant these guys directly and probably get a crop off of them. So that's kind of a theory we're going to test, and I'm pretty sure it's going to work because we've got a whole bunch of these guys that, they're still firm. There's nothing wrong with them, and I can see individual eyes on them, and I think, we'll just plant them out in the field and just see if we get exactly the same thing as if we started, individual slips themselves. Now, one of the things that we're really disappointed in, and I think this just goes back to the supply chain. There are problems that are going on out there, and we, our Georgia Jets came in, this is like almost the start of the third week, so it was about 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks ago. And we ordered just 12 slips because we just kind of wanted to get some seed stock on it going. And they came in really bad shape. And what was surprising about it is we had ordered these things before, and it's almost like they'd been left in the mail too long. They came in, not in our box. No, I mean in terms of transit, and many of them were dried out. Some of them I tried to save. There's still a little bit of life left on some of these guys. And then the other ones, looks like they're going to root and eventually pull out of it. But they were incredibly bad shape. There's no live leaves left on any of the stems. And so we have kind of been nursing these guys along and seeing if we can get them back to health before we stick them out in the field. So folks, you know, one of the things to think about is in this day and age, just the way things are going, it's quality, availability. You know, you got to start thinking some resilience on some things you can do yourself. So when you get, you know, a point like you harvest your sweet potatoes and you look at these, you know, goofy things and you go, well, I'm not going to keep that, I'll just throw them in the compost pile. My recommendation would be set them aside, you know, cure them like you would. Don't let them dry out, but save them like you would like a tuber, like a dahlia tuber. Or, you know, put them someplace where they're going to be, their humidity is going to be okay, but not so much that they're going to rot. Put them in, you know, a dark place so they don't sprout right away, and use them next year. So I'm thinking my advocacy would be, hey, more resilience you can do with this kind of stuff, the better, because at least, you know, we're still experiencing problems, and this is year 2 of the same stuff. So anyway, that's my preaching for today. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take some slips off of the ones we started, and I just kind of want to walk through the process. It's really kind of simple. We're going to be using some K&F solutions to kind of help juice them a little bit. I mean, sweet potatoes normally in themselves, you know, the slips that are on here, they've got a lot of vitality just on their own. But we're going to put a little bit of fermented plant juice and a little bit of LAB in the water solution that we're going to use to get these guys to root. Because the actuality of what we're doing is we're cutting these guys off as close to the tuber as we can and strip off the bottom leaves, and we're going to put these guys into a water solution, and they'll quickly form roots at the individual leaf nodes where we took the leaves off. So like on this tray alone, we can probably get, I don't know, a good 15-20 starts right now, and there'll be more coming along here probably pretty quick. And then we have another tray of the same variety, and these guys were much more vigorous in making sprouts, and these guys are more vigorous. Even got a couple of weeds in here, so you know, I know that I'm organic, right? So yeah, we're probably going to get a total of probably a good 20 slips, and in the solution itself, we'll probably lose a few that won't root. And so what I'm kind of shooting for is to try to get to like maybe ultimately, in terms of plants to be able to put in the ground, I want to get another 30 plants. That seemed to be kind of a nice number for us. And then when we consider that we got the Georgia Jets and the Beauregards, we're probably going to have a total of somewhere around 50 sweet potato plants.
It's not Beauregard.
It's not Beauregard?
It's something called Magnon. Magnon?
You told me it was Beauregard.
I was hoping, but I couldn't get it.
Oh, so they substituted on you.
I guess.
Oh, okay.
Sweet potatoes were hard to buy, period. I couldn't find any, and then I could, but...
See, I'm standing here acting like I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so before we cut the slips, we're going to make up the solution that we're going to let these guys root in. I got 2 jars here because I know I got 2 different sizes. I have some that are kind of short, and then others that are maybe a little longer. So the nice thing about these canning jars, this is what, a pint size?
The pint.
This is a half pint. But they've got markings on the side, either in you know, English or measurement or milliliters. And I filled this guy to 300 milliliters and this one to 150. And that way I know how many drops of blackberry FPJ to put in and how many drops of LAB. Now, this is not the exact seed enhancing solution that the K&F folks use, because that would also include OHN and things like some vinegar, and I'm not going to go all the way into that. I just want to give these guys a little bit of protection with the LAB, and I want to give them a little bit of a biostimulant. So this is just to kind of help them get started. Now, the dilution rate for the FPJ, the fermented plant juice, is 1 to 500, and for the LAB, it's 1 to 1000. So each dropper, and your standard dropper, this is like a dropper from like a, I don't know, you can get them in anything. Like, as an example, sometimes they come with liquid extracts for herbal stuff like vanilla or something like that, or sweetening drops or things of that nature. But anyway, the standard dropper drops 0.05 milliliters per drop, and it's very weird. I've tested it and it's really close to that. So what that means is, in order to get a dilution of 300 milliliters, I need to put in, for a 1 to 500, I need to put in 0.6 milliliters, which equates to 12 drops. And so what I'm going to do is put 12 drops in the big guy and 6 drops in the little guy, since this is half of that one. And this is thrilling video. Watch me make drops. Let me make sure I got enough in there. There we go. 1, 2. And magically, the water turns a little brown. All right, we'll put 6 in there as 1. Okay, that's 6 in that one. Okay, so then the next thing we're gonna do, let me clean my dropper here. Let me open this guy up. And the LAB is exactly half of that. So I'm gonna put 6 in this one and 3 in that one. And that's it. And just rinse that off and then just kind of stir it up a little bit, so it's all mixed up. And that's the solution I'm going to be using to kind of help these guys just get started, rooted fast, and put this someplace where it's warm, so it doesn't get cold at night. Sweet potatoes they definitely need some protection in the early on. So we're still getting, in our area, we're still getting down into the high 40s and low 50s at night. So this is definitely, it's going to be something that's going to be inside the greenhouse, maybe even on a heat mat. Okay, so then our next step is we're going to go to these guys and we're going to actually do some cuttings. Now, we don't need to take the weed, so I'm going to get rid of those 2 guys. These guys are getting a little dry too. Now what these tubers have done is they've actually put roots out in this stuff, so it's actually, they've kind of gotten themselves established in here. And what I'm going to try to do is, you can kind of see down where the base of the actual cutting goes to the actual tuber itself. And I'm just going to cut right close to the tuber that I can. So now you can see this one's fairly short. I'm just going to take these bottom leaves off because I don't need that much. Just need these guys at the top. And that's it. That's my slip. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to get roots forming here and here. I'm probably going to take this guy off too. Don't need that many leaves. And so we get roots at the nodes. So we just put them into there, and that's it. So we're just going to fill these guys up and take as many as we can, and keep this watered so that they'll sprout some more. We don't want to. What we don't want to do is we don't want to snap it off right at the eye, because what can happen now is that area where I cut it off it can actually resprout some more slips. And you know, this is kind of a hit and miss sometimes. You know, how many do you actually get that actually, you know, turn into really good plants and that you can, you know, got really good root systems developed on it, etc. And these are all nice and very sturdy. They feel like they've got a lot of, you know, vigor to them. And so that's it. That's really the whole process. So we're going to go through, and it'll take about 7 days for these guys to root. And then once they root, we'll just temporarily, if the weather's not ready yet, you know, the soil temperature has got to be, for us, has got to be closer to 50. And that usually typically happens in the middle of June. So we may end up potting these guys up if they root for a week or two before we actually stick them in the ground. Because interesting thing about Western Oregon's climate is, in a normal spring, we can have days where we're going to get like in the high 80s and maybe even in the 90s. And the nighttime temperatures will go back down into 50. And then it'll be followed up by a period of a week or so of rain in which you get dumped on with 40-degree water. So it's like we have to get past that point in our spring where what we're looking at is the dry season. That way the nighttime temperatures are in the 60s, daytime temperatures are in the 80s, and these guys will grow really well. Soil temperatures will be up, and the plants will be vigorous. So that's the whole process. You have any questions?
They're just going to grow in the solution. But
Yeah.
It's mostly water.
Yeah, it's mostly water. It's just a little bit, like I said, a little bit of the KNF biostimulant and a little bit of the LAB to kind of help them out. And they'll root in there really pretty quick. And then the other thing we're going to do is, like I said, once things warm up, probably the middle of June, we'll take our weird little spudlets and we'll plant these guys directly and see if we can get them to grow just directly from that.
So we're experimenting.
We're experimenting with that, yeah, and I think it's going to be kind of cool to see because, you know, surely I mean, when you really look at this, I'll take off tons of slips off of these two guys, and then in a couple of weeks they'll be right back doing it again. So the question is, you know, when do you start, you know, pre-sprouting these guys to get to the slip point? And that's going to really just depend on your climate. For us, we really can't get these guys in the ground until June and
late June,
and sometimes late June, because we pushed it too much last year and we put them in and they just did not look good. They were not happy campers at all when we put them in the ground. I think it was like early June. We kind of planted in the same time we planted our tomatoes. And the tomatoes did fine, but the sweet potatoes went, not warm enough.
Got eaten by
Yeah.
slugs and
Yeah, I mean, if they don't grow, then they can't, you know, they're tasty morsels for other things. So, but what then happened is once we hit that dry season, and they took off. And I think we probably have a couple of pictures we can show in the video, kind of what it looked like. We really got a good vining situation out of it. Now, one of the other things we're going to do too is we're going to make an FPJ out of this, because sweet potatoes, like any vigorous growing plant, sweet potatoes, the greens you can use in a salad. It's actually really pretty good. But these growth tips and stuff, once these guys get spreading and get out there, you can make excellent FPJ out of this stuff, which will help you with all your plants, you know, when you're doing the KNF solutions in early spring the next year. So if you can look at it and you say, oh, you know, I'm in the dry season, nothing's growing vigorous anymore unless it's irrigated. Well, one of the things that grows really vigorous is sweet potatoes. So be sure, if you need to make FPJ, consider these guys. They're excellent for it. Now, we're going to wrap things up. My producer says, too long, cut. But I just wanted to kind of, you know, give you guys kind of heads up on what we're doing with the sweet potatoes this year. And want to thank you for watching. And as always, stay safe, and we'll catch you on the next video. Bye-bye.
bye-bye.